Hello, this is Tracy. Many people believe they fail because they don't have luck, because the world is against them, or because success simply wasn't meant for them. But the truth, a truth I have learned over decades of studying high achievers, is that failure isn't born in the final outcome. It's born in the morning, in the very first thought you have upon waking, in the way you begin your day. Because every single morning, whether you realize it or not, you are constructing your destiny. Are you building a fortress of discipline and clarity, or are you repeating a pattern of chaos that leads you to the exact same mistakes time and time again? I learned, not through theory but through hard-won experience, that success is not an isolated event. It is a direct consequence of what you do and what you fail to do when you begin your day. If you are truly tired of failing, you don't need to wait for some miraculous opportunity to fall from the sky. You need to train your morning. Because when you control your first decisions of the day, you control your direction. And when you control your direction, success stops being a fantasy and becomes a daily, actionable strategy. Failure doesn't usually shout. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It doesn't show up one day with a label that says, "Here I am, the thing that is holding you back." No, failure is much more subtle than that. It seeps into the small things. It establishes a foothold in the first few minutes of your day, in the seemingly harmless decision to hit the snooze button and steal 5 more minutes of low-quality sleep. It takes root in the habit of checking messages before you check in with your goals. It solidifies in the quiet, corrosive thought, "Today won't be any different." That is where it all begins. It begins in that first invisible battle that most people lose before they even get out of bed. Because what truly determines whether you will have a productive, focused, and intentional day is not what you do at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you're reacting to crises. It is what you do in the first 30 minutes after you open your eyes. If you begin your day from a place of reaction, of confusion, of mental and physical laziness, then you are entering the race of life with severe handicap. The world doesn't wait for you to get focused. The world rewards those who are already in motion while others are still waking up to their excuses. Here is a truth that very few people want to accept. Profound success is not built on a few grand, sporadic decisions. It is forged in the furnace of micro-decisions, repeated day after day after day. The way you get out of bed, the way you speak to yourself in the mirror, the thoughts you allow to occupy your mental real estate, the priority you give to your most important goals. These things either make you or they break you. This isn't about waking up at 5 a.m. because it's trendy, nor is it about blindly following some routine you copied from the internet. It's about having absolute clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you want, and what you are willing to do to get there. And that clarity can only be activated when you deliberately direct your mind in the morning, not when you let it wander aimlessly. You cannot expect to achieve different results if every morning begins with improvisation. You cannot expect a life of order if every day starts with mental noise, without structure, without a clear and compelling purpose. Because your day is not shaped by the clock on the wall, it is shaped by the intention in your mind. The morning is a training ground for your character. It is there that you decide, consciously or unconsciously, whether today will be just another day, or day one of a new life. Every time you open your eyes and allow yourself to be dragged along by impulse, the impulse to sleep more, to avoid discomfort, to dwell on what you lack, you are reinforcing an identity that keeps you stuck where you don't want to be. But when you decide that your morning will be sacred, that your first hour will be untouchable, that this time does not belong to the world but to you and your highest aspirations, then something fundamental changes. You can feel it. Others will notice it. And that change accumulates. It compounds over time. A good morning does not guarantee a perfect day, but it does prepare you to face the inevitable challenges with more strength, more clarity, and more intention. And that, sustained over time, transforms everything. Because your life doesn't change when the one big opportunity finally arrives. Your life changes when you stop squandering the small ones, especially the one you are given every single morning. Every morning that begins with rush, with chaos, with distraction, is a morning that pushes you further away from your best self. But you don't notice it immediately because morning failure doesn't have immediate, painful consequences. There is no alarm that blares when you decide to procrastinate on what's most important. There is no visible punishment when you surrender to autopilot. There is only a subtle sense of discouragement, a lack of energy, a feeling of always chasing something that remains just out of reach. Over time, that feeling becomes your identity. You start telling yourself, I'm not consistent, or I always lack something, or I'm just not like those successful people. But what you truly lack is not motivation. It is structure. It is focus. It is a firm, unshakable decision to no longer give away your mornings to disorder. Because a person who does not master their beginning will be dragged along by the rest of their day. You don't fail because of what you do in the big moments. You fail because of what you don't do when no one is watching. You fail by not getting up when you promised yourself you would. You fail by not taking 2 minutes to write down what you want to achieve. You fail by not visualizing the person you want to become. You fail by not training your mind to find solutions instead of feeding it with complaints. Every morning is a blank page that you can fill with habits that strengthen you or with habits that weigh you down. And the most dangerous thing is not having one disorganized morning. It is having one every single day and believing that it's normal. Because what you repeat without awareness becomes your destiny. And if every dawn is just as lukewarm, just as scattered, just as weak as the last, how can you possibly expect your life to be firm, clear, and strong? You must design your mornings as if you were designing your future, because, in fact, that is precisely what you are doing. What you do in that first hour after waking sends a powerful message to your brain. You are either here to dominate the day or to survive it, and your brain responds accordingly. If you begin with order, with intention, with direction, then everything else begins to align. Your emotions become more stable. Your decisions become more firm. Your motivation stops depending on external impulses and starts to well up from within your very identity. But if you start the day by reacting to messages, to social media notifications, to thoughts of scarcity and lack, then chaos seizes control of your mind before you've even had a chance to decide anything. And another day slips through your fingers. Do this. Get out of bed without negotiating with laziness. Drink a full glass of water as a first act of respect for your body. Then, sit in silence, even if it's only for 5 minutes, and ask yourself this powerful question. What do I need to do today to be proud of myself when my head hits the pillow tonight? Not what the world needs, not what your job needs, not what your environment needs. You. Then, write down 3 things. 1 action that will move you closer to your primary goal, 1 attitude you want to embody throughout the day, and 1 negative thought you will not allow to take root today. That is structure. That is direction. And it doesn't take more than 15 minutes. But those 15 minutes are worth more than an entire day lived without consciousness. Because it's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters first, at the very beginning, where it all starts, where it is decided if your day will be another repetition or a silent declaration that you are changing, this time for real. I remember a young man I coached years ago, a salesman named Michael. He was full of talent and ambition, but his results were consistently mediocre. He would come to our sessions full of frustration, saying things like, "Brian, I'm working so hard, I'm making the calls, but nothing is clicking." He was convinced the market was bad or his product was priced too high. He was looking for external reasons for his internal lack of progress. So one day, I stopped him and asked a simple question. "Michael, walk me through your first hour of the day, from the moment your alarm goes off." He described a scene of pure chaos. His alarm would ring. He'd hit snooze 2 or 3 times. Then he'd grab his phone, scroll through emails and social media, seeing problems and comparisons before his feet even touched the floor. He'd rush to get ready, grab a cup of coffee, and run out the door, already feeling behind, already feeling stressed. He was starting his day on the defensive, reacting to a world that was already demanding things from him. He was losing the day before it had even truly begun. I told him to forget about his sales script, his closing techniques, everything for 1 week. Instead, his only assignment was to change his first hour. No snooze button. The moment the alarm went off, his feet hit the floor. He was to drink a glass of water, then sit with a notepad for 10 minutes. In that notepad, he was to write his number 1 goal at the top of the page. Then, he was to write down the 3 most important actions he could take that day to move toward that goal. That was it. No phone, no email, no news. Just him, his goal, and his plan. The first few days were difficult. His mind screamed for the distraction of his phone. But he stuck with it. By the end of the week, when he came to see me, he was a different person. He was calmer, more focused. He said, "Brian, it's the strangest thing. The market hasn't changed. My product is the same, but I feel like I'm in control for the first time." His sales didn't just improve, they doubled within a month. He didn't become a better salesman overnight. He became a more disciplined, focused man in the morning, and that man naturally became a better salesman throughout the rest of the day. He stopped failing by habit and started winning by design. Many people think they fail because they lack time or because they haven't found their big break. But the truth is much harsher and much simpler. They fail because they have not learned to be consistent when the initial enthusiasm disappears. Anyone can have a burst of motivation on a Monday. Very few know how to maintain their discipline on a Thursday, when their body feels heavy, when their mind is filled with doubt, when the noise of the world demands their immediate attention. And that is where those who advance separate from those who merely repeat the same cycles. The separation does not happen in the intensity of their beginnings, but in the solidity of their continuity. It doesn't matter how many times you have tried something. If you have not managed to sustain the action with or without the feeling of motivation, with or without immediate results, then you will remain trapped in the same loop. Start with enthusiasm, get distracted, give up, and repeat. That pattern is broken every single morning, not with brute force, but with precise, unwavering focus. A disciplined mind knows that the true enemy is not external failure, but internal disconnection. It's that feeling of living each day as if it were an accident, as if you had no choice in how you want to feel, how you want to act, or how you want to respond. And that is a lie. You can choose. You can choose which thoughts to feed, which habits to sustain, which excuses to disable. But you cannot choose if you are not conscious. And consciousness only appears when you stop, breathe, and direct your mind before the world fills it with noise. What are you feeding your mind each morning? What thoughts are repeating on a loop before you even get out of bed? If you start the day with guilt, with complaint, with comparison, you are digging a trench in your own territory. And the worst part is, you don't even realize you're doing it. You call it your routine. But in reality, it is slow-motion self-destruction. The person who does not take control of their first thought has already lost half the day. Because thought guides emotion, emotion guides action, and action creates your results. If your first thought is, "I don't want to get up, today is going to be heavy, here we go again," then everything that follows is contaminated by that energy. But if your first thought is chosen, not imposed, then you reclaim your power. If you decide to begin the day with direction, then the rest of your day has a spine. It won't be perfect, it won't be easy, but it will have structure. And that structure is what sustains you when your emotions are not enough. Take control with something as simple as getting up at the time you promised yourself you would. Do it not out of obligation, but out of self-respect. Then, breathe. Write down what you want to achieve. And visualize, even for just 2 minutes, the version of you who has already achieved it. See how that version of you acts, how they walk, how they speak to themselves. That version is not a fantasy. It is a possibility. But you can only reach it if your current self begins to make decisions that are aligned with it. And all of that, absolutely everything, begins in the morning. It is where the vision is sown, where the focus is calibrated, where the tone for the entire day is set. If you do not dominate that moment, the rest of your moments will dominate you. But if you conquer it, then everything else begins to respond. Because the world obeys those who have already learned to command themselves. And the best training for that begins the moment you open your eyes. The most common error of those who fail consistently is not that they don't try, but that they begin the day without direction, without a real commitment to themselves. Simply waking up early means nothing if you do it without purpose. Drinking coffee and sitting in front of a screen has no weight if there is no intention behind it. You can spend the entire day being busy and end it feeling just as empty as when you started. Because being busy is not the same as being productive, and being productive is not the same as making progress. There is only real progress when there is clarity, and that clarity is built from the very first instant you open your eyes. If you want to stop failing, you don't have to change everything at once. You have to begin the day with intention, with direction, with a plan. A simple plan, a powerful plan, a plan that you repeat so often that your mind recognizes it as an unbreakable command. And if you are here, listening to my voice right now, it's because something in you is tired of falling into the same cycles. It's because something deep inside of you knows that you are capable of more, that you deserve more, that you have been procrastinating out of fear, out of doubt, or out of a simple lack of structure. But that can change. Not with words, but with actions. With a different kind of morning. A morning in which you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't see the same person. A morning where, even if the world doesn't notice, you feel something different inside you. Determination, firmness, a powerful silence. That feeling of, today is a day. Not because everything is resolved, but because this time you are not going to betray yourself. This time you are going to follow through, even if no one is watching, even if there is no applause, even if it's hard. Because you are worth it. Because you are no longer willing to live another day as if it were a copy of the last one. And if these words are resonating with you, if something is telling you that this is your moment, then subscribe to this channel right now. Don't do it for the channel. Don't do it for the videos. Do it for yourself. Do it as a daily reminder that there's a different path, that there's a firmer, clearer, more focused way to live. Do it to join a place where we honor growth, discipline, and consciousness. You are not alone. There are many of us who have decided not to give up, not to procrastinate on our own lives, not to settle for less. And every new person who joins us here is a symbol, a person who has decided to change the way they start their day, and by doing so, change the way they walk through life. Write in the comments below. This time, I follow through for myself. Write it not for me, but for you, so that tomorrow morning when your alarm goes off, you remember that promise and you keep it. Because that simple phrase can become your code, your compass, your anchor, and if you repeat it enough, your mind will believe it. And when your mind believes, you act. And when you act, you are no longer repeating history. You are writing a new one, with the ink of willpower, with the letters of character, with pages filled with firm decisions. This is how the transformation begins. Not with a miracle, but with one different morning. This one, right here, right now. What very few people truly understand is that every morning is an opportunity to rewrite yourself. You do not need the calendar to change. You do not need a new month to begin. You do not need to wait for Monday. Every single day that you open your eyes is a silent invitation from destiny. Are you going to live like you did yesterday? Or are you going to build something new? And that construction is not emotional. It is not based on how motivated you feel. It is based on how willing you are to act even when you don't feel like it. Because if your commitment to yourself depends on your mood, then you are trapped. You are a prisoner of your impulses, of your hormones, of the weather, of your environment. But if your commitment is firm, it doesn't matter how you feel. You do what you have to do. You move, you get organized, you hold the line, because your word to yourself weighs more than your fleeting emotions. What separates a person who achieves great things from the one who always gets stuck halfway is not intelligence, nor luck, nor contacts. It is invisible discipline. It's a discipline that no one else sees, but that transforms everything. It is a discipline that makes you get up early when no one is forcing you. The discipline that leads you to plan your day when you could just as easily improvise. The discipline that makes you read, write, train your mind, set boundaries, and breathe before you react. It is a discipline that makes you strong on the inside, even when there is no applause on the outside. It is that silent discipline that makes all the difference. It's what hardens you without making you cold, what focuses you without making you rigid, what transforms you because you stop being a slave to your old habits and you become the architect of your own identity. But none of that happens if you don't convert it into a routine, into something non-negotiable. You do not need more motivation. You need rituals that remind you of who you are, who you want to become, and what you are willing to do. And those rituals begin the moment you wake up with one deep breath, with one clear affirmation, with one firm action, with a silent decision that says, "Today, I do not fail myself." Repeat that every single morning. Write it down. Read it. Feel it. Make it your mantra. Because a person who does not fail themselves becomes invincible. You may have bad days. You may have moments of doubt, but you do not stop. You do not disintegrate. You do not get lost, because your direction is stronger than your emotions. And over time, that internal strength begins to reflect on the outside. Your decisions become quicker. Your voice becomes firmer. Your posture becomes more upright. Your presence becomes clearer. Because you have built a structure within yourself that holds you up. And that structure wasn't given to you by the world. You built it, yourself, every morning when you chose not to repeat yourself, when you did what you had to do even when it wasn't easy, when you treated yourself like a person who was committed to their best version. That is what makes you different. Not perfect, but firm. Not without errors, but without excuses. Because what began as a small habit ended up becoming a new way of living. And that silent but real change changes everything. Most people fail not because they don't have dreams, but because they haven't learned to protect their energy. They start the morning with noble intentions, but as soon as the day begins to apply pressure, they forget everything. It's not because they don't want to advance. It's because they don't have a strategy to stay focused when the environment pulls at them, when the notifications start pinging, when problems appear, when other people demand their time, their attention, and their mind. And that is where the day escapes from their hands. They don't lose a day at 5 p.m. They lose it at 9 a.m. when they allowed external chaos to define their internal direction. I learned this lesson the hard way early in my career. I was full of ambition, working 12-hour days, but I felt like I was running on a treadmill. I would start my day with a long to-do list, but by mid-morning, I'd be putting out fires, responding to urgent emails, and getting pulled into meetings that had little to do with my primary goals. I was busy, but I wasn't moving forward. My energy was being fractured and scattered before I had a chance to apply it to what truly mattered. The change came when I realized my focus was my most valuable asset, and I was giving it away for free to anyone who asked. I decided to build a fortress around my first 90 minutes of the day. I called it my golden hour, though it was often 90 minutes. During that time, the phone was off. The email was closed. My door was shut. I worked exclusively on the one task that, if completed, would have the greatest positive impact on my life and career. This one change was revolutionary. By protecting my focus, I accomplished more in those 90 minutes than I previously had in an entire day of distracted work. That is why, if you want to stop failing, you don't just need a plan. You need to shield your focus. You must turn it into an impenetrable fortress. In a world that is competing for your attention every single second, focus is no longer just an advantage. It is a necessity for survival and success. The morning is the most sacred time of the day because it has not yet been contaminated by the urgencies of others. It is a pure, clean, silent space. And if you do not take advantage of it, you lose it. If you do not fill it with your own direction, the noise of the world will fill it for you. And that noise, as innocent as it may seem, pulls you away from your goals. Because being distracted today seems harmless, but repeating it every day is what creates a life of mediocrity. A life where there is always movement, but never advancement. A life where there is always activity, but never depth. And that is what is so exhausting. It is not the effort, but the lack of purpose. It is not the hard work, but the disconnection from your vision. That is why you need to use every morning as a reprogramming session. Not in a symbolic way. In a practical, strategic way. You have to train yourself to return to your center, to filter what enters your mind, to select what you think about, what you focus on, and what you give power to. Create a ritual that anchors you, that forces you to remember who you are before the world tries to tell you. It can be a written affirmation, a key question, a conscious breath, a powerful visualization. But do it every day, without excuses, without breaks, without interruptions. Because this doesn't just prepare you, it protects you. It protects you from the chaos, from the anxiety, from confusion, from that feeling of being alive but without direction. And it doesn't need to last for an hour. It just needs to be real. It needs to connect you with your vision. It needs to remind you that your time is valuable, that your mind is not for rent, and that your energy is not available to just anyone or anything. If you maintain that focus, if you turn it into a discipline, then something begins to change. Distractions no longer have the same power over you. The urgencies of others no longer pull you from your center. Your emotions stop managing you, because you have decided that you will not fail for a lack of clarity. You will not repeat the same old story. You will not give away the most valuable thing you have, your attention, to that which does not build you. And that change, although it seems invisible at first, is what makes you unstoppable. Because a person who masters their focus masters their destiny. The problem isn't that you fail once. The problem is that when you fail, you build an internal story that justifies continuing to fail. It's a silent narrative that you repeat every morning, perhaps without even realizing it. I'm not good enough. I always quit. I don't have what it takes. And that voice, which seems like a mere whisper, becomes an internal command. It becomes a program that directs your actions, sabotages your best decisions, and returns you to the exact same starting point, no matter how hard you try to move forward. Because no habit is more destructive than the way you speak to yourself. It is what you say to yourself upon waking, what you think about yourself when the day is just beginning. Therefore, if you truly want to stop failing, you have to change the story. You have to rewrite the way you perceive yourself. You cannot build a new life with a mind that repeats the same old lies. No profound change happens without mental reprogramming. And this reprogramming isn't magic. It isn't superficial positive thinking. It is strategic repetition. It is conscious affirmation. It is a daily practice of choosing what kind of person you want to be until that person becomes real. Not through blind faith, but through trained conviction. Every morning, you have to speak to yourself as if you were already that version of yourself. It doesn't matter if you don't feel it yet. It doesn't matter if your environment doesn't reflect it yet. You train yourself from the inside out, because if your mind believes it, your body will follow. And if your body acts, your life will transform. It is that simple, and it is that powerful. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about directing your mind before it drags you back into the same old pattern. Say it out loud every morning. Today, I act as a disciplined, strong, and determined person. Say it even if you don't feel that way yet. Because by repeating it, by sustaining it, by moving from that energy, you begin to change your identity. And your identity is the core of everything. You do not act according to what you desire. You act according to what you believe you are. And if every day you remind yourself that you are weak, distracted, and inconsistent, you will continue to behave that way. But if every day you affirm with clarity who you have decided to be, even before you feel it, then what is an affirmation today will become your character tomorrow. The morning is a perfect time to install this new narrative, before doubt can interrupt you, before the noise can contaminate you, when there is still enough silence to hear your own truth. Do it. Write it down. Repeat it. If necessary, record it and listen to it every single day. Because the mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is repeatedly told. It only needs consistency. It only needs direction. And if you do not provide that direction, someone or something else will. The world will tell you what to think, how to feel, and what to say. But if you get there first, if you plant your truth first, then everything else loses its power. Because you have chosen your story. And a person who chooses their story every morning has already started to win, long before they even leave the house. One of the most silent causes of failure is a lack of emotional closure with the past. Because so often, you begin the day with your body in the present, but your mind trapped in old mistakes, in decisions you didn't make, in opportunities you let slip by, in words that hurt you, in moments where you failed yourself and you have not yet forgiven yourself. And so, even if you try to focus, even if you have clear goals, you are dragging an invisible weight behind you that sabotages your every advance. Because no one can build the future if they wake up every morning carrying the guilt of yesterday. That guilt slows you down. That guilt makes you doubt. That guilt makes you start every single day with low energy, with your mind divided between what you want to achieve and what you have not allowed yourself to let go of. You must understand this. What you do not close, you repeat. What you do not forgive limits you. What you do not face drags you down. That is why a fundamental part of every morning must be to clear the ground. It must be to forgive yourself for what you did not know how to do better. To accept that at that moment, you acted with a level of consciousness you had at the time. To understand that if you would do something different today, it's because you have already grown, because you have already learned it, because you are already someone else. And that is not weakness, that is maturity. A mature person does not live their life justifying their past, but they don't remain trapped by it either. They honor it, they learn from it, they transcend it. And in doing so, they recover their energy, they recover their focus, they recover their freedom. Every morning, if you want to be truly powerful, you have to pause, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and tell yourself, today, I do not punish myself. Today, I use everything I have been to become better. That phrase may sound simple, but spoken with intention, with consciousness, with an open heart, it cleanses more than 1,000 hours of analysis, because it gives you back the right to move forward without the weight. It reminds you that you are not your mistakes. You are the one who faced them and decided to keep walking, with more strength, with more clarity, with more compassion toward yourself. Because the person who treats themselves with respect every morning begins a day from a place of strength, not from a place of lack. This isn't about forgetting what happened. It is about integrating it, using it, and saying, this happened, but it does not define me. This hurt, but it taught me. This failed, but I am not a failure. That is the narrative you need to install, not because it's pretty, but because it is functional. Because that narrative is what allows you to move forward with your chest open, your back straight, and your gaze firm. And when that is sustained every morning, it changes the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you decide. Because you are no longer running from your past. You are using it as your foundation. And that foundation, clean of guilt, solid in its intention, gives you a stability that the world cannot give you. Remember, every new day is a blank page. Do not bring yesterday's stains to it. Do not start with old ink. Choose to write something new, something firm, something of your own, something worthy. And to do that, the first thing you have to let go of is the idea that you have to keep carrying everything. Not today. Today, you begin differently. Today, you choose to advance lightly. And a person who advances lightly can go as far as they want. The greatest mistake made by the person who fails time and again is to think that changing their life requires changing everything at once. They believe they need a radical transformation, a miraculous event, a single breaking point where everything magically reorganizes itself. But the reality is quite different. Great transformations do not begin with drastic decisions. They begin with small, sustained commitments. They begin with acts so simple they seem insignificant, but when accumulated day after day, they become an unbreakable foundation. You do not fail because you lack the capacity to change. You fail because you underestimate the power of the small. You fail because you don't believe that waking up 5 minutes earlier, writing 3 sentences in a notebook, choosing a better response in a moment of anger, or drinking water before coffee can actually change your life. But it can, and it will, if you repeat it, if you honor it, if you make it a part of your new identity. You have to stop romanticizing change as something dramatic. Real change makes no noise. It doesn't need an epic soundtrack playing in the background. It is silent. It is repetitive. It is often boring. But that is where the magic is hidden. It is hidden in what you do when no one is watching, in what you repeat even when you don't see immediate results, in what you sustain even when you don't feel like it. And to sustain it, you need an internal emotional structure that reminds you, a voice inside that says, this small thing, even though it seems like nothing, is everything. Because when you fall, you don't fall for lack of knowledge. You fall for a lack of a system. And that system is built with micro-actions, aligned with clear steps, with order. If you wake up every morning and tell yourself that you need to change your entire life, you will end up exhausted before you even begin. But if every morning you tell yourself, today, I will only be better in one thing, just one, then you recover your power, because you are no longer overwhelmed, you are focused. And that focus, sustained for a week, a month, a year, makes you invincible. Because you are not competing with the world. You are building yourself from the inside out, step by step, brick by brick, with the patience of someone who doesn't need to prove anything, only to advance. Ask yourself every morning, what can I do today that will bring me just a little bit closer to my best self? Not to perfection, not to total success, but to your best version. It could be a decision, a conversation, a chosen moment of silence, an excuse that you no longer buy into. Anything. But let it be conscious, let it be yours, let it be real. Because when you choose one small victory every day, something inside of you gets stronger. And when that something gets stronger, failure doesn't hurt in the same way. Because it stops being an ending and becomes a teacher. And that is how you win. Not with grandiose gestures, but with minimal, daily, firm, and decisive consistency. And so, one day, you wake up and you realize that everything you dreamed of didn't arrive by magic. It arrived because you did not give up on the small things. And the person who does not give up on the small things always ends up achieving the great ones. And in the end, when all is said and done, when the days have passed and your excuses can no longer hold you up, you will understand a simple but inescapable truth. You did not fail for a lack of opportunities. You failed for not taking control of yourself each morning. Because in every dawn, you had the chance to change your story, to rewrite your destiny, to walk a different path. And you chose to postpone. You chose to repeat. You chose to wait. But if you are here today, if you have made it to this point, it is because something in your soul can no longer tolerate more of the same. Because within you, there's a voice that is screaming in silence, enough of this. And that voice, when you listen to it with courage, becomes your guide, your strength, your rebirth. You did not come here to merely survive your days. You came here to build a life worthy of being lived. A life with direction, with character, with power. But that is not given to you. It is conquered. And it is conquered when you stop negotiating with your excuses, when you commit to your best version, when you get up every morning with a single question in your mind. How can I honor myself today? Because when a person honors themselves, when they decide to stop being a result of their past and start becoming the architect of their present, then the world no longer drags them along. They move through it. They command it. They transform it. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. It will not arrive. You do not need more information, more motivation, more inspiration. What you need is emotional discipline, internal commitment, a morning ritual, and a brutally honest decision. Today, I take charge of myself. Because you no longer want to look back with regret. Because you are no longer willing to be a passive spectator in your own story. Because you know, in your deepest core, that you were made for more, and that more is not reached by dreaming, it is reached by acting. You can have the life you desire. You can recover your confidence. You can have clarity, strength, success, and fulfillment, but only if you begin to act every single morning like a person who no longer betrays themselves, like a person who doesn't need anyone to push them, like a person who, upon opening their eyes, says to themselves, "Today, I do not fail. Today, I become who I came here to be." And when that phrase ceases to be a wish and becomes your law, then there is no turning back, because you are no longer the same person, because you no longer stop, because now, finally, you have understood. The person who transforms a morning transforms their entire life.